to continuing our work together on the clearing process. We're at step 3. And remember, what we're doing is investigating the energy that you've been holding your whole life, which you haven't known, that emanates out from you and is creating situations that you don't like repeatedly. So today, your assignment for today was to, as we talked about, look at the situation you identified, which was a typical one that bothers you in your life, and you were to take a deep look inside yourself and find 3 feelings that were coming up in that situation. And along with naming the feelings, which I asked you to do very precisely. So step 3 is called when. When with a question mark. And that's what we're going to get into now. I titled this step when because what we're doing is taking a snapshot of our life and using it to scan our entire past. Because without fail, it always turns out that if you take this cluster of the 3 feelings, you're going to find that you felt exactly those same 3 feelings in other situations in your life. That's the search we're on, to discover those times, the whens, that the same cluster of feelings arose in us. So I'm going to kind of lead you through a little experience, just a bit, and then again I'm going to ask you to do this on your own. But I'd like to show you the way that I teach people to access this. So you'll close your eyes and look again at in your mind at the 3 feelings that you experienced in the situation you identified, and work chronologically backward. Ask yourself, and I'll go ahead and ask you now, when in your, say, the last few years, have you felt these same 3 feelings? Perhaps it was in college or in a marriage or in raising your children. Just kind of start looking backward and say to yourself, when did I feel those same things? What was going on? And make a note of it. Then look back further in your life, maybe 10 years, and ask yourself, was there any time, any people I was with, any situations, relationships, that I would have felt those same 3 feelings? And continue to go backward in your life into childhood, looking for instances, situations where you found yourself feeling those same 3 feelings. It's remarkable how many you're going to come up with. This might be a good time to mention that what you're looking at was not coincidental. The fact that you repeated drew to you situations that were so similar all during your life is not your fault. It's going to turn out that there's something you haven't ever told the truth to yourself about. And your soul self is saying, come on, let's find that. Let's get in touch with what's going on in you that you don't even know. And it's going to be something from your early childhood. Not necessarily involving all of these feelings as unconscious, but one of them is going to turn out to have been unconscious. And we can't discover it unless we use this combination of 3 to work backward and backward and backward. Let me give you an example of my own. I was raised in a family where my father beat my mother when he drank. And of course, as a child, it was terrible. And from the time that I was quite little, if I ever asked my mother about it, for example, like, Mommy, why does Daddy hit you? She would tell me, don't talk bad about your father. And I learned from the very beginning that I could not be angry. Anger at the man of the house was not permitted in my family. And I felt alone and I felt ashamed of my family. but I didn't ever feel angry, ever. So that's fine. That got me through childhood, not being mad at my dad. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, here I was with a graduate degree in psychology, and I married not one, but two men who were violent like my father was. Me, an intelligent woman. I simply did not get mad at them. I understood them. I excused them. I loved them. So you see, the anger had to come up and be cleared. That anger had been repressed. The truth is, every family has things that are unspokenly not allowed to be felt. Sometimes the children are told explicitly, don't feel that, like I was. And sometimes it's just that you knew as a child that that was not permitted to be felt in your family. So your assignment as we move ahead into step 4 is going to be to continue looking back, but go all the way back now to your young childhood. You're not going to be able to remember everybody says, I can hardly remember anything from my childhood. So that's all right. You know what your family was like. You have memories of your childhood home, of your siblings. Get out photos if you can, even photos of your parents when you were very young. This sounds elaborate, but it's very effective. So sit with yourself and those 3 feelings that you have traced back through your life, and ask yourself, when I was little, might I have felt these same 3 things? Now, you're not going to be able to remember, for example, if, like me, if anger was the one thing you could not feel about your parent or parents. Like me, you're not going to remember being angry because it had to be subconscious. That's why we don't know that we're carrying it, because it's subconscious. And that's how our DNA is programmed, that as a young child we cannot experience or feel anything in the family that is not allowed. So we can't even know that we feel it. I want to share another example with you. A woman that I worked with in Florida was at the top of her game, both at work, and she felt like it at home, too. She was really in charge of her life, very organized, very powerful. The only problem was that her marriage was going downhill badly. She and her husband fought all the time, and they had for years. She had 2 small children, but she was so afraid of what effect it was having on them, and she was quite unhappy and really thinking about getting a divorce. So we went through this whole process together, and the feelings that she came up about what was happening with the arguing with her husband were, if I remember correctly, frustration, sadness, and anger. We looked back through her life and we found so many times when she had felt those 3 things. But let me tell you what it turned out to be. The source of the continued emanating out this energy that had him treating her in a specific way and had her repeating her behavior over and over again was that in her family there was tons of anger. The parents were very angry at the kids. The kids were allowed to throw tantrums. Anger was kind of the modus operandi of the family. What was never allowed was sadness. Never. And so if she ever started crying when she was 2 years old because she wasn't allowed to do something, her mother would say, "Hey, zip it up. Stand up and take care of yourself. We don't cry in this family." And so what she had created was a family in her current life where there was so much anger and fighting. She did not really realize until we dug into it together that she was feeling so sad about it. She just could not express sadness to her husband. What she really wanted to say was, "Please don't talk to me like that. It just makes me feel like crying when you talk like that and when you do that." Instead, what she said was, "Are you kidding me? You're not going to treat me like that," etc., etc. So that changed her life, because when we went back into her childhood and discovered the sadness that had been there all along, but that she couldn't know that she felt because sadness was not permitted as a child in her family. So what we're doing with this work is we're finding the truth and we're telling it to ourselves. We don't have to tell anybody else. We just have to tell it to ourselves. Why? So our subconscious can let us feel it and remember how awful it was and let it come up and feel it. You'll find that this is extremely transformative. When we get together the next time, we're going to pull it all together so that you really have a sense of where you're at with this, where you're going, and what there is to handle. Then we'll get into step 5, where we actually do the clearing work together. So your work now is to go back to your childhood with these 3 feelings that you've discovered have been repetitive, and stay with it until you find situations that might have generated those 3 feelings. And be gentle with yourself. Imagine yourself as a little kid, and whatever was going on in your family or with your siblings or with other relatives. Just imagine you, picture you, be very vivid in your imagination, and picture what was going on around you. And let yourself tell the truth about how you might have been feeling. Okay, see you next time.